Good evening, and welcome to New Foundation Unity. This is our third in a series of classes. This one is on Prayer of the Silence, Part 1 and Part 2. This is the heart and soul of this wonderful book by E.V. Ingraham called Prayer, Its Practice, and it's it's practice and its answer. And just before you all came, Mark called to tell me that the broadcast was coming through, and he said that he had discovered that there was somebody else who was so happy to hear that this had come back into Unity's consciousness. Also, Mark has scanned and put on his computer website, truthunity.net. If you wish to print out chapter by chapter, you can actually read it along with me. This copy that I have, it's precious, but it's falling apart. You know, just each time I open it and read it, a few more pages come loose. It's yellowed, but it is autographed by E.V. Ingraham, and it's a first edition of 1935. Thank you, Stan, for gifting me with that. Tonight we will be talking about the practice of the silence. And so as we begin our time together, I'd like to begin with that experience so that we can actually have a deeper understanding and experience of what that actually means, and in addition, how it unfolds from within us. So I invite you to find a comfortable place in your seat and close your eyes. And as we turn within, know that we are turning to that place of the unknown within us. We turn within to discover the nature of our true selves and from where we give birth to it. So as you turn within, expect the good that will come. Expect new possibilities to open to you. Expect whatever you will. Anticipate and feel the good that you desire. Feel it, wear it as the energy that will draw that thing to you. And so for a few moments in the silence, actually more than a few moments, let us rest in that awareness that infinite good awaits us in the silence. And now as we begin to return our attention to this time and this place, we give thanks for the mystery of the self that awaits our discovery, for the possibilities, for the vision, for the good that God is longing to bring forth in and through us, and for an awareness of that truth which sets us free. We are so grateful, and we do give thanks in the name and through the power of the Christ that lives within us all. Amen. Oh, yeah. Do you want her to move over, Jackie? Welcome to you out in cyberspace. I hope we have some viewers. If you have any technical difficulties, email Mark at truthunity.net. And tonight, later on, there will be time for you to call in if you wish to make a comment or ask a question. And the number is 816-301-6304. 816-301-6304. There's nothing I'd rather be doing tonight than talking about the prayer of silence, because it's about giving birth to a part of ourselves that we have not known and we have not functioned with for a long time. The Bible verse that best describes part 1 of this prayer of silence is, "Be still and know." If I were guiding you into your first experience of the silence, I would first tell you that it is within us, all right? That it is something, I would say, it's a journey, and it holds great possibilities for you, that where your attention is going to be is inward, so that you can make contact with the source within you. And I would also tell you that there are many benefits from touching that source, such as an expanded vision, a sense of more possibilities, a sense of good that exists there and wants to come forth in and through us. And hopefully you would feel that expectancy, that anticipation of, ooh, this is something that I want. Okay? You can't engage in a practice if you can't see something of value there. All right. And the next thing I would tell you is one of the best practices that we have is to feel grateful for all that is yet to be discovered. That no matter where you are in this journey, there is always more, because that realm of silence within you is of infinite depth. Okay. That being said, we begin the actual practice by becoming still. So if out there you thought that maybe your computer wasn't working, we were experiencing that time in the silence. It is a practice that involves a sense of self. She likes to drink water out of a glass. Yeah. Evie Ingraham says it's a practice that is the beginning of all discovery. All discovery. It's the beginning of spiritual progress. Up until this time, we've been functioning with a very limited range of conscious thinking. Right? What are the estimates? A generous one would be like 10%. We have this infinite depth to be explored, and yet we have been functioning with such a small fraction of it that we take the limitations as a kind of normal. And so when you're told that, oh, you're more than your body, you're more than your thoughts, you are more than your feelings, and you say, oh, really? And then once you have accepted that as a possibility, then you're willing to turn within to experience it. And the unfoldment happens in degrees. Theoretically, it need not take a long time. It has to do with the intensity with your desire. I'm not sure I mentioned this, but Eric Butterworth said, the intense desire that we might be feeling is as if your head were underwater and you wanted a breath. Can you imagine wanting that kingdom within you with that kind of intensity? And the beauty of it is that as you go deeper within, it pulls you down to the source. And I say down because it's at the center of your being. Okay. Be still and know. This is only part one. Now, what happens sometimes is we accept that, we believe it, I'm sure everyone here believes that there's infinite possibilities and good for us and we ought to have it, and right? But we have to really feel it as a reality. Okay, so where we get hung up is that already within our minds are impressions and memories and beliefs and ideas and attitudes that maybe have been with us for a long time. And so we may start out and feel like this old stuff is coming up, and that's good because it's supposed to. All right, we have to let go of the old beliefs and ideas that are not in alignment with this new perspective that we are gaining. It's actually a fairly, I would say, automatic process that as you go within, it's very natural for everything that does not serve the expansion of that silence within you to be released. And so we have to have an understanding. Let me give you a few examples. we have, and I am going to you probably all have this. And these, okay, diagrams, okay? Diagrams. And these. Okay. Okay, first let's look at the Trinity of man. This one. We are spirit. We express through a soul. What is a soul? It's our thinking, and that includes intellect, all right? It includes conscious and feeling, which includes intuition, and it includes the subconscious. So the contents of the soul are the total conscious and subconscious mind, all right? All the thoughts and feelings of the conscious and subconscious mind. That's the contents of a soul. So in order for spirit to express through us, we have to bring those two, thinking and feeling, into an alignment so that spirit has a clear highway with which to flow. Remember what John the Baptist said. He said, I have to decrease so that Christ can increase. And he was preparing the way, clearing away the garbage from the roadways. And that's essentially what we're doing, is clearing the garbage. That was actually the case in those days. The roadways were garbage dumps. And so when a king was coming, they had to quick get that garbage out of the highways, and they would take it over to this place called Gehenna and burn it, all right? Purify it, all right? So the king could have a clear path, all right? That's a metaphor for what we are doing. We're clearing the garbage from the path. So that is the work of the soul, right? We have to clear up the ideas that we have, and we have to clear up attitudes that we have so that we can make a clear path for that spirit to come through. Do you remember the Bible story which best illustrates that? It was in the last class that I taught on the teachings of Jesus. Anybody remember? What was the first sign? Anyone remember the first sign? It's in the Gospel of John, chapter 2. I believe. You all flunked. No, you did not flunk. You did not. You were all Gold Star students. But I like to give you a chance to tell me before I don't want to just talk at you. I want to give you a chance to be engaged in the process. It was the marriage of Cana. All right, we have to have an internal wedding for that Christ to come through. And that is a wedding that takes place within the soul. So the thinking and the feeling, the intellect and the intuition, the conscious and the subconscious have to be one in alignment with the Christ. Now, we have a tendency to ask questions. All right. Remember, ask, seek, knock. ask and it will be given, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open. Well, we're very prone to asking, seeking, and knocking, but we forget to listen. And so this part 1 is really about listening. How do you pick up your guidance? It's through listening. How do you pick up a new idea? All right, a new idea. And here we see that when we close the door, we go into that inner chamber and close the door right here to the outside world. Oh, we become still, and suddenly we are able to pick up a new idea that we call a divine idea. Oh, just like the Israelites going through the desert. Oh, God is peace. Oh, God is healing. God is my provider. All right, you have these new ideas. Oh, I never knew that. Okay. We cannot have a conflict inside. We can't have the thinking going one way and the feeling going another way. Why? Well, first of all, we can't be successful in bringing forth anything. All right, it's like we do sometimes try to have a foot in both camps and say, yeah, I believe in health, but what about the sickness? You know, I believe, but help my unbelief. I believe in infinite good, but there's always that little but that is hearing that other voice inside of you that says, but remember that experience of when I was in poverty? Remember that experience? And so these are the things that come up because the silence is there to help you release those things which you have unconsciously held that do not serve the bringing forth of the Christ. Right? So you remember the wedding of Cana? What had to happen? Oh, Mary. And Mary represents the soul, our feeling nature. And she becomes aware that the wine is running out. That's a big breach of hospitality in those days, for the wine to be running out. Wine symbolizes life. Have you ever become aware of your life energy being low? Right? Have we not all experienced that? And what does she do? She turns to Jesus. And Jesus says, why are you turning to me? Right? Why me? And so what she does is she goes to the servants and she says, do whatever he tells you. He said, it's not my time. It is not my hour. The Christ cannot come through until the will has been surrendered. All right? And then what happens? Jesus goes into gear as the Christ, and the water becomes wine, and everyone is surprised, and especially the master of the feast, who says, you've saved the best for the last. Okay. That story is the beginning of the unfoldment, where we unify the soul. That unification has to take place there if we want to bring forth that infinite good that lies within us. Now, once you become aware that there's a conflict between your thinking and your feeling. Or one day you may find yourself acting one way and yet knowing the truth. Ever done that? And it's important to know that it's not just that you decrease your capacity to succeed, but that you actually lay the foundation for physical damage. All right? Inner conflict. Let's say you're having a challenge with your finances. And so you dwell on the difficulties until your emotion is impregnated with the difficulty. All right, so you've matched up your feeling with a difficulty, and you not only created a conflict inside, but that causes ill health, that kind of conflict. Anger. Okay, anger is another thing. Fear and anger are the two emotions that, if they are intense enough, can result not only in that decreased capacity to bring forth good, but it is the foundation of ill health. First two principles of Reiki, just for today, do not worry. And there are lots of studies that let us know that worry is dwelling on the worst case scenario. It's not about acknowledging danger or that. It's like dwelling on the difficulty. Remember the golden key, all right? Acknowledge the difficulty, but then turn your attention to the solution to the difficulty, right? Lift up your eyes unto the hills. That's Psalm 121, is that? Thought I wrote that down. Okay, lift up your eyes. Also, Moses, in the book of Numbers, Moses is told, and this is in chapter 32, the land you see, that will I give you as an inheritance. Now remember, as you go within, you're discovering new territory. It's a new country. And all that you can receive, the vision that you have of what is there, that is your inheritance. Okay? So we discover that in degrees. Okay. And so how do we transcend these fixed boundaries? How do we don't fight them. You remember Jesus saying you can't take the kingdom by force, right? You can't force your way. You can't stand out here on the surface and say and will yourself. I mean, you possibly can if you have a strong enough will. I think Charles Fillmore might have done that. But you transcend the boundaries. You go beyond them. You don't offer resistance. You don't give them power. You simply allow the awareness to go where it wants to go. It's attracted to those possibilities that you believe that you can have. And so you enter that realm with anticipation and expectancy. That sense of anticipation, I can remember as a child, came up at Christmas time. I mean, it was often I didn't get what I wanted for Christmas. It wasn't that, but it was like all the decorations and all the music and and all these packages under a tree, and it was like, what's in there? Just this sense of anticipation of something wonderful about to happen, even if it was greater than the actual realization. And sometimes that's what structures your actual experience of something, is the anticipation and the expectancy of something wonderful about to happen. But what happens if you start out and you say, I never get what I want, I'm not lucky, everybody else, maybe I don't deserve it, maybe Santa's checking his list and saying I deserve a piece of coal or something, right? And so that expectancy and that sense of anticipation is important when you realize that there's that infinite good there, those possibilities that really exist. E.V. Ingraham also says that, and I think this is important, that the practice of silence is the simplest form of awareness. It is the simplest, and it is our most advanced subject. It is our most advanced field, because in the silence, everything, all the fragments that are floating around in the mind, as you go in, awareness becomes more concentrated until there's just you and the divine, and then you transcend, and even if it's just for a flash, that you've experienced a release of energy that is good enough to change your perspective, good enough to change your life. As Paul said, I die daily, and each day we die daily to something old, and each day we bring forth something new. And what's important, it's not when you get there or what the goal is, it's that you experience progress on the way. That means you're increasing your capacity to expand what is inside. And if this is not making sense to you, please ask a question. Because otherwise, I will go on. Okay. In prior times, we may have been, we have been told what the law is, right? You know the law. As in mind, so in manifestation. Right? The thoughts that you hold in mind are going to express in form after their kind. Right? We know that. And that is the basic process, the creative process. And it doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's how the law works. So you become more aware of where you invest your feeling, because the feeling is the fuel in the creative process. Okay, we can have 100,000 thousands of thoughts, but without the feeling, they will come to naught. Right? Have you ever had lots of thoughts, but your heart wasn't totally in that? You didn't totally invest energy in that? Now, here's, when you do discover something new, what we generally say is, I see, meaning I comprehend. I comprehend, and I get that there are things here that I did not know about myself. All right, so we say that, and is it enough just to know? And I'm going to tell you that no, but it's enough to be inspired to engage that something new and to bring it into outer activity. All right, here's an important, which I have bolded here. So this is a direct quote. The very essence of the thing we seek is not in the things we ask for, but in the release of our own souls from limitation and in the freedom of our spirit. So what is that understood? Shall we have a little discussion about that? Okay. If you ask for something concrete, and there's nothing wrong with asking for something, all right, but what you are always essentially asking is more awareness of that infinite good. All right, we're asking for an expanded vision, we're asking for an expanded capacity to know more, to be more, to have more. In other words, you can ask for, let's say, a new car, but what you're really asking for, the essence of what you want, is perfect transportation. All right, let's say that. Or if you're asking for a house, what are you essentially asking for? House is a symbol of consciousness, actually, so that's in, and a car is a symbol of your vehicle. So a house. So you're asking, in essence, for that perfection in consciousness, which will allow you to express life with the fullest vitality possible. It's shelter, all right? It's shelter. So it's not just that. We don't derive energy from things, right? You can look at this chair all night and you're not going to get energy from that chair. Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't agree with that, and I don't know why, but I think I can get energy from that chair. I think that chair, I think all things hold energy in that chair. It holds the energy of the creator, of the designer, of the manufacturer, and I think I can be inspired by the beauty of the chair, by the comfort of the chair.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but I just
No,
don't-
that
I
all
don't agree
all
with
of
that.
what you
Everything
say
holds energy.
is true. But if you want a consciousness of, let's say, abundance, a consciousness of all those things that you named, then you wouldn't just focus on a chair. I agree with you that everything is energy. Everything in form does hold energy. But for developing your capacity, and you can disagree again, I like it, you go to the source of energy to bring forth a new idea, a new attitude about things, a new perspective. Okay. It's that we're about establishing a foundation, and Charles Fillmore says that that once energy is transformed into a form, that it's the spent force. In other words, it's like if you buy something, then the energy that was in that money is now in a form. and you wouldn't go to that form in order to develop a consciousness of abundance. Does that clarify the point?
I'm not agreeing.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I can, because my consciousness of abundance, when I look at that chair, could be that chair is causing me then to move into the consciousness of the room it can be in, and the growing consciousness. I think something where my brain is going to really, and it's not relevant maybe to this discussion, but you hear it sort of, I don't hear about it anymore, but things like treasure mapping and some different things, techniques people have used to create, even masterminding to a certain way, to create, what do? You get the form in mind, and the form creates the energy to bring forth.
The attention on the form, yes.
Yes, and so it's the relationship with the form that creates the attention.
Well, I'll have to think on that one. If you think of the purpose of the whole process as breathing life into the soul, which is the way the book began, I think of the soul becoming more and more vital in terms of its thinking and feeling and its alignment between the two, which is a foundation for allowing the wholeness that is within you to come forth.
See, I think where I'm going with it, I hadn't thought about this before really, but where I'm going with it is that everything speaks of that relationship if our eyes and hearts are open. And so everything invites us to move further. The silence is the beginning, but it's unfolding in all of this, and it all begins then to be in relationship with the maker, with the creator, with the mother, father, with with the divine presence, however you want to say it. And anyway, that's enough for me to go there for now. It's just
Okay. Well, it's definitely a part of the discussion. I think perhaps in part 2 of the silence, but part 1 is called the Father Principle, because this is where you comprehend. You go into the silence and you say, I see this possibility and that possibility. But when you get to the second part of silence, this is the Mother Principle. This is what you give birth to. And what you give birth to depends on the purity, Mary, the purity of that feeling nature. How did she develop it? Magnified the Lord daily in the temple. And she wasn't contemplating or pondering a physical son. She was pondering the revelation of her heart, what was being revealed to her about the Christ. And so she gave birth to the Christ. She wasn't thinking about a boy who was special. She was thinking about giving birth to a Christ that is made in the image and likeness of God. This is about recognizing that the image of God has been implanted in you. That's what's called the Father Principle. Now, bringing forth the likeness, that's the Mother Principle. And one interesting thing that, now you probably know this, Kevin, but I did not know this, and that is that the crucifix is a symbol of this process. That the first thing is to go from head to heart, And the second thing is to start on the left side and bring the heart forth. It's the heart, the feeling nature, that is the fuel for your ideas. It's what makes the birth happen. So bringing forth that heart energy that creates, and that's the mother principle, giving birth to the Christ. So I don't know, maybe you all know that. No, the crucifix. No, I didn't cross myself either as a child, but I'm sure you have many times, and it's always this way. And well, now I know what it means, all right? And it's a description of this process, going in, coming from your head down to here, your solar plexus, where it meets up with the cardiac plexus, and then starting here, where your heart is on the left side, and moving it over to the right side. All right? So that's what you're doing. You're going in, and then you're giving birth to. All right. To me, that was a revelation. And so, when it comes to talking about unifying the thinking and the feeling, and you say, well, how many me's are there? How many people exist within me? Because Jesus said, if two of you agree on anything, and you touch that thing, the Father will give it to you. If two of you agree, well, how many voices do you have within you? Do you have, sometimes we call it the human self and the spiritual self, or we call it the mind and the body, or we call it, or E.B. Ingraham calls it the self as I am right now and the self I would like to be. And so how do you manifest the self? How would it feel? What would it look like? How would it behave if I were the self that I have in mind as my ideal? And maybe this other self that's complaining, you say, that's not me. Okay, and so we reconcile, we bring that agreement between what we call real and what we call ideal. Not real because real means non-changing, but when I'm saying real, I'm saying what we take to be real through our senses and what we conceive of as ideal. And so where we put our attention grows stronger in our experience. Physical law, spiritual law, where we put our attention grows stronger in our experience. So where do you put attention? Constantly keeping your attention on the highest possibility for yourself. Am I right? Is it not natural to want to grow into that higher possibility? I think so. That's what the lilies do. And this is about considering the lilies, how they grow. Jesus would not have said that if it didn't have some relevance to our own spiritual growth. So the inside grows and expresses that intelligence, that perfect plan, and the outer shell begins to decrease, just like John the Baptist said. So that's how the lilies grow, and that's how we grow. So where we put our attention grows stronger in our experience. And as you go within, it becomes a more intense degree of silence. So that when you come out, you have more awareness, more vision, a new perspective. It's not something you just do in an emergency. And you may disagree with this one as well, but that's all right. But the one area where I would encourage you to be disciplined is in this practice of going within. Mary magnified the Lord daily in the temple. My teacher said, your meditation, that's your office hours, and the rest of life is recreation. Okay? Because if you seek that kingdom regularly, a kind of momentum builds. And yes, eventually you are able to live from within that power and presence, and to use your creative process from within there. I'm not to that point.
I not only agree with that, I think a meditation practice of going into the silence sucks us in to wanting more silence and more silence.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. Why? Because there's gravity at work. All right? Gravity pulls us in. All you have to do is to allow it to do that. And that's what many find difficult. And I've heard a lot of reasons why there's resistance. It's unfamiliar. It's unknown territory. I've heard fear of what you might find. But it's natural to be pulled in that direction. What does the mind really want? The mind really wants peace. Isn't that the truth of it? The mind seeks peace. I've heard, I'm not going to use this expression because I cannot stand it, but people have different ideas of what the nature of the mind is. But the nature of the mind is to seek more and more. And that more and more, in an inward way, results in a deeper and deeper sense of peace. And once you experience it, then you can radiate it. So you start out using the law for your own purposes, and then you get to the point where you can express from within that power and presence and radiate peace. That's why Charles Fillmore said that when we have these groups, these silent groups, meditating all around the world, think of the possibilities that we can radiate peace into a troubled world. We don't have to have endless discussions and committees and services, and we don't have to have one day of prayer. We have a consciousness of peace that is radiated from all these silent unity groups. I wish we still had some silent unity groups, but maybe they're reforming now. To do that, once the power of that silence is realized. Whenever there's a really salient point, I quote it because I'm so awed by this book. Okay, so wherever two forces within our own being are united in perfect agreement, that would be the thinking and the feeling, a conception takes place, and from that conception, a birth. Okay. So what is ours to do to be divinely pregnant? Those are his words. All right? So we want to be sure, and that's inevitable. If our thinking and feeling are together, in line with Spirit, then that is what gets planted within the desire of bringing forth the Christ. That's how we do it. There's in Psalm number 1, and he's saying, how do we do this? Meditate in Psalm 1. It says, meditate upon the law day and night, meaning be in that place. Like another way Jesus said is, or somebody, James maybe, pray without ceasing. All right, meaning not down on your knees or begging or anything, but simply being in that consciousness continually. And in the Psalm number 1, it says, meditate upon the law of the Lord day and night. Have your attention on what it is that you want to bring forth through this law. Let's see, how are we doing? I've gone, hey, you out there in cyberspace. If you would like to call in and join the discussion or ask a question, 816-301-6304. And always you get to ask first or comment first if you have anything. So what we learn to do is to conceive the good. We have to conceive it first and invest our thinking and our feeling together in that. And think of how rarely our thinking and feeling are together. How rarely that happens. I think of the book Behaving as If the God of All Life Mattered. You know, we have these beliefs that we definitely believe them, but we obviously don't feel them, or we would act differently. Does that make sense? Do we not believe in abundance and lack? Have you ever believed in both? Have you ever doubted yourself? Can you believe that you are the Christ and a worm of the dust at the same time? I don't think so. And so that dual concept, it has to become one. Mm-hmm. And everything integrated into one being. Okay. Okay. Otherwise, there's no birth. There's just an abortion. Okay. He really carries this birth thing. It is a good analogy because we are here to give birth to the essence of who we are, the fullest expression of who we are. And it's, if you think about it with the expectancy and anticipation that he describes, it's like, wow, I am an inheritor of the qualities of God just like Jesus was. I can do the greater works as Jesus promised. And when you say, but I'm not doing those greater works, then that is your inspiration to continue to go deeper into the silence until you are integrated on the inside. That marriage takes place on the inside. And then immediately after the wedding at Cana, there's healing, the second sign. The official whose servant was ill. And he says, oh, just speak the word. You don't have to come to my house, Okay. And then as you go through those signs, increased level of, we might say, difficulty. Nothing is difficult for that divine presence, but in terms of the depth that you must attain, there's more depth as you progress until you get to Lazarus. Lazarus, come forth. And then the final one is when Jesus says, on the cross, into thy hands I commit my spirit. All right? A total surrender. So it begins with Mary pondering the revelation of the Christ in her heart to the final chapter of the unfoldment of the Christ, which is a total surrender. All right? Into thy hands I commit my spirit. Well, that's the silence part 1. In part 2, and Unity used to pray, Father, Mother, God. I don't hear that much anymore, but I can see how that started. Okay? So it's the Father that gives you initially the knowledge as you become still, and it's the Mother that provides the energy to bring that forth. So, anything you'd like to discuss about this? 816-301-6304. The people out there are very shy, and I know that none of you are. So, does that say anything with regard to your own spiritual practice? And how reverently and faithfully do you work with that?
Seems to me like the key thing is to know what you want. That's always the hardest question to answer.
To know what you want?
That's in the beginning.
In the beginning, it is perhaps a difficulty to know what you want. And that's why when you become still, that's when you become aware of levels of yourself that you had previously not been aware of. Okay. And you say, I want more. What you're actually saying is, I want more growth. I want more expansion. I want more of this depth to come into my outer life. Right?
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay. If you enter into the silence casually, you get casual results. And I don't ever think that we outgrow the prayer of asking, because when are we ever totally self-sufficient and can bring forth absolutely anything? So I think it's natural to ask for more guidance, to ask for more depth, to ask for a greater vision. Maybe what you ask for changes, but I think that always there is that sense that there's more. And so the words cease to be just words. Jesus said, the words kill and the Spirit brings life. Some words, okay, the words kill and spirit brings life. In other words, if you understand the spirit that is behind those words, if you experience the spirit that is behind the words, then it's meaningful. Just like I was talking about the crucifix, you know, what a difference it makes instead of just some mechanical gesture, which I thought it was, to know that what you're doing is bringing your awareness from your head to your heart, and to then taking your heart from the left and expanding it out here.
I don't know who figured that out, but I don't think there's two Catholics in the whole world who think that way.
Well, you being Graham figured it.
Let me tell you that traditionally the sign of the cross was the way the Christians during the martyr time of the martyrs identified each other. They made a sign of a cross on themselves because they could be safe. I think that metaphysical interpretation is really great. I like that. But I don't think it's anything.
Nothing historic. I'm giving them too much credit.
I don't. Well, no. I think for people who that's their faith, it's powerful. It connects with what they identify with in the sign of the cross. I think it's really important to respect other people's faith. And when people make that, even if it's automatic, it's maybe just like a unity affirmation or something. It's an affirmation, may not be what we want to connect with, but they are identifying with the suffering and the resurrection of Jesus. And that is the core of the religious practice of that, is identifying with the suffering and the resurrection of Jesus. It's not exactly what I would study or teach anymore, but it is something that's very effective and I think to be honored, you know. So.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's what I got from the book. Because I haven't always been that respectful. Yeah. We still have 8 minutes for you to call in and contribute to our discussion. 816-301-6304. It's interesting that, and I've taught this practice of silence for many, many, many years. And after you have the experience, there's always a need for understanding, because one's old conception of what meditation ought to be is not the reality. And so every time you have a deeper experience, there is a new level of understanding that is provided. Okay, and that's ongoing. And so if you start out in a class where you learn, I'm made in the image and likeness of God, I'm a spiritual being, you get this in a class, and then, that sounds pretty good, but then the experience of it, and that's your own discovery and your own progress. All right? Otherwise, as Charles said, the truth you know is the truth you use, and all the rest is theory. My favorite quote of Charles Pilmer. Yeah?
Say it again.
The truth you know is the truth you use, and all the rest is theory. Theory. Okay. And I've seen and heard a lot of theory in unity, and in some cases it's become very intellectual. Or a little on the other side, on the feeling level, a little bit fluffy, but it's so much more than that. Unity, as my chaplain teacher said when I was in school, he said, unity is a racehorse. Don't use it as a draft horse. He said, it's like this diamond that you're not even aware of the value of what it can do, how it can solve anything if you go to the level of solution within you. It starts with each one of us. You know our peace song? Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Yeah, it has to begin with us. It can't begin with the United Nations. It can't begin with a committee to study peace. You know, it's like you hear people sitting around looking for light, you know, and someone will say, well, let's study the light, but what about the darkness? And, you know, and you get into all these, like, intellectual conversations, and where you just have to close your eyes and bring it forth. Well, let's close our eyes. And for these last few moments, allow the silence once more to descend and nourish our souls. And bless us with whatever revelation is ours to come forth. And feel grateful for what has been revealed and what is yet to be revealed. And we say, thank you, God. Amen. So, next week, we have Jerry. Jerry, it's all right.
What's the matter?
He can't, he's deaf and maybe a little blind. We're not sure. I think he sees ghosts, but he's not in pain, I assure you. So next week, E.V. Ingraham, there's actually 3 more chapters, and we will go at least 1 more week, and if you feel another week is needed, I am willing to go there. But the next week, it's called the Prayer of Command. Be ye made whole. Lazarus, come forth. And then there's a chapter called Answer to Prayer. And finally, there is 1 more at the end, which is, oh, this is fragile. This is so fragile. It's called Prayer Applied to the Practical Plane. All right. And so I wish you all in cyberspace good night. And for those of you here, I invite you to have some cake and goodies. Enjoy the flowers. We have water and essential oils for cocktails. And every day is a birthday.